Wild food, that's what hunting and gathering is all about. This is a journey into Britain's ancient way of life as we attempt to find the foods eaten by our hunter-gatherer ancestors.
Thousands of years ago, here in Britain, all of our ancestors would have been hunter-gatherers, but we know precious little about what they were eating. We believe that when they moved inland from the coast, they would have followed the waterways, and it certainly would have made sense. Rivers not only would have provided an excellent means of navigation, but they were chocker with wild foods.
After the Ice Age melted away, Britain became a water world. A mosaic of marshes, swamps and lakes, far more extensive than we know today. I'm going to look at what remains of these wetlands with the eyes and appetites of a hunter-gatherer. And I hope to gain new insights into these fragile places as I attempt to taste the past. Joining me on this culinary journey is my friend Professor Gordon Hillman from University College London, who has spent his life studying and eating ancient wild foods. One of the most famous Stone Age excavations in Britain is of a hunting camp on the edge of a lake surrounded by reed beds like these. So this makes a good place to start. And amongst these reeds, there's a prime candidate for a staple food for our ancestors.
The plant I'm interested in here is this one. Some people call them cattails. You can see why. The proper name was greater reed mace. And this is an incredible plant. It's got a lot of uses. The downy seed head here, that can be used to make fire. You could also use it to stuff clothing to keep you warm. The dry stems here, you can rub those between your hands to make fire. But the most important thing about this plant is the fact that you can get food from it. Nearly always through the year as well. This will provide you a carbohydrate at almost any season of the year. The bit you need is underground. It's actually the rhizomes, which are like a mat here of ropes that stretch all the way through this area, connecting these plants from the old flowering heads to the new shooting parts here. To get them out, it's quite hard work. I've got one here. Then what inevitably happens, you find a place where they cross over, and then your fingers have to make that decision. Do you stick with the one you've been following, or try and take the other one as well? That's good. You have to be quite patient. If you pull too soon, the things just snap off. I don't want that. That's fine. That's good. That feels good. And that's the kind of thing you get. You can see this is full of carbohydrates. Really good food. Definitely worth the effort to drag the canoe to the water, because the water at this time of year is cold and it's hard work getting these out. Normally you have to wade or even swim in amongst them to try and get them up. That's a good one.
Reed mace brings in an easy harvest, but doesn't taste good eaten raw. We're interested in ways of extracting the goodness from the starchy central core.
Now, we tried eating that as it is, and it was like eating live elvers. It was just slippery, and we couldn't get the starch out by chewing it. So we decided to pound it instead. So we add some water to this, not a huge amount. We don't have to splash. That's about right, I think.
Pounding has separated the starch from the fibres, making a thick soup.
a consistency not dissimilar to what you used to use in schools as glue. It was called gloy in those days. It's certainly glutinous, like that used to be. Rather scruffy.
We've heated Gordon's mush to begin the thickening process, but it could just as easily have been left to congeal in the sun without the need for cooking pots.
I've made you a drying rack for your gloop.
Well, the gloop is very gloopy.
You want to do that?
You need to spread it on.
Okay.
It's pretty glutinous.
Yep. People looking at this might think that's a pretty miserable colour, which it is. That's good consistency though. So this is going to dry now really easily, and when that's dried it'll go quite hard and brittle, and that could easily be packed into a bag and taken on a journey, and it could be then crumbled up and added to other foods, liquid foods, to give them thickening. At the moment it's just a bland paste, but you know, it's an ingredient. I mean, if we were to go to our kitchen today and put our hand into a tub of flour and taste it, we would be very unimpressed. But what was done with this then at the next stage on, that we can only guess at.
Sure.
In a village situation, this is clearly a good and efficient way of producing a carbohydrate.
Yes.
I used to do this, but I've gone back to a more primitive way of cooking the cattail, which I think gives it a much better flavour. Maybe more the sort of thing that hunters might do if they were out in the marsh here looking for some deer or something. They could cook something very quickly. If you see there, you can see a skin, and then inside the skin is this spongy layer. And basically this comes oven ready. You just stick it straight in the embers and toast it until it's black. Get it good and hot, and it greatly improves the flavour, softens it, and it's delicious.
Of course, the advantage of roasting will be that you actually tend to caramelise your carbohydrate to make it more sweet.
Certainly it improves the flavour.
Yeah.
I often wonder, you know, when people were moving around in Britain following migratory animals, that they could easily have gone to cattail as a travel food.
Yes.
Even these rhizomes can be put in a pack
Sure.
and carried for 2 or 3 days
Yeah.
and still used without any problem. And when I've hiked and relied on plant food for energy, this is surprisingly good. I mean, you really do get a rejuvenating energy from cattail.
Yes.
This is done now. What I've done is I've charred it. You can see it looks very unappealing. The bit I want though is in the middle, and what I have to do is break this open, and there, looking like cooked potato, are the fibres covered in starch. What you do now is you throw them out, and you chew that and you suck the starch of it. It tastes a cross between potato and sweet chestnut. It's wonderful.
I think the best of it's gone. I'll have to wait for another piece. You've had the best of it, Mears.
That's right, Gordon, you've got your grey stuff.
That's going to wait a while.
You can have your dry biscuit.
The dense mat of reed mace means we can literally walk on water, and as other plants take root, the landscape changes. These wetland fringes have a delicate, untamed nature, which is rare these days. But for our ancestors, they would have been essential habitats, providing rich pickings to supplement their carbohydrates.
These are quite nice.
They're quite juicy, aren't they?
Young nettles are very nutritious, if you can get past the stings. But they need heating before eating, and that's normally done by boiling.
That's a good one. That's probably enough, isn't it?
Probably enough, yes.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we're going to have a little play with are the nettles. Our ancestors didn't have a cooking pot. They could have taken a bark vessel, put water in it and dropped hot rocks in it to bring it to the boil, but it's an awful lot of work. And in my mind, even though nettles are good eating, I'm not convinced that they're actually worth all that effort unless you've got some meat to put in there.